She laughed at me across the brunch table, said I didn't have a real job, right in front of our entire family. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly building the company she'd just applied to, and I was the one reviewing her resume. Hi, I'm Eleanor. I've spent most of my life in the background, quiet, underestimated, invisible. But sometimes, the people you overlook are the ones holding the biggest truths. So tell me, have you ever had to stay silent while someone else took the spotlight? And if you finally had the chance to be seen, would you take it? Let me know in the comments. She joked I didn't have a real job, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. No one laughed, not even the parents who always did. The sunlight slipped through the striped awning and bounced off the polished silverware, painting golden streaks across the mahogany table. I sat at my usual spot, far right corner, next to the window overlooking Green Lake. The smell of buttered waffles and maple syrup filled the air, but the coffee in front of me had gone cold. I kept stirring it slowly, not because I intended to drink it, but because the rhythmic motion had always helped me stay grounded. The hum of forks tapping against plates filled the silence my voice never entered. My sister Vivian was radiant as always, legs crossed, high-heeled boot tapping in tempo to her own monologue. She waved her freshly manicured hand, flashing the engagement ring our mother still gushed over. "I swear," she laughed, "it's kind of hilarious that someone in their 30s still doesn't have a real job." No one said anything, but also no one told her to stop. Not Dad, who busied himself with cutting a too crispy sausage link. Not Mom, who murmured something like, "Vivian, don't be like that," and then went back to rearranging the jam spoons. Not Uncle Henry, who always seemed to take Vivian's side, if only because he didn't know how not to. That's how it always was. Vivian had a voice that filled rooms, and I had a presence that seemed to recede when she entered them. I didn't mind the quiet. I had made a life out of it. I suppose it started on my 12th birthday, the first time I remember feeling like the side note in my own story. While I stood by the cake, a small smile on my lips as the candles flickered, Vivian burst into the room with a trophy held high over her head. "Our baby just won state!" Mom shrieked, rushing to her side while I quietly blew out the candles myself. No one asked me what I had wished for. It didn't matter. That had been Vivian's day too. It always was. I never tried to compete. I just stepped back. And in that space, I built something no one saw coming. At 27, I sat beside my best friend Sam Fletcher in a cramped, windowless studio apartment in Capitol Hill. We ate ramen 5 nights a week, used textbooks as monitor stands, and slept under the hum of servers overheating in the summer. Dataloom was a dream back then, just lines of code and broken algorithms. But we believed in what we were building. A predictive analytics system that could adapt in real time. Banks, hospitals, schools, they all needed it. We just had to survive long enough to finish it. We did more than survive. 5 years later, Dataloom was valued at over $80 million. We had contracts with the federal government, 5 major hospitals, and 3 Fortune 500 companies. Sam was the face. Always had been. Public speaking came easily to him, and I was more than happy to be the quiet force behind the curtain. My name wasn't on the homepage or the press releases. I never appeared in interviews or at conferences. That was our deal from day one. What no one knew, not even my family, was that I owned 49% of it. And I signed every budget, every hiring document, and yes, every paycheck. I stared across the table at Vivian, who hadn't stopped talking since she walked in. "So, I finally quit that accounting firm," she said, with a flick of her hair. They were going nowhere fast, and honestly, I'm better than that. She took a sip of mimosa. I'm applying somewhere way more exciting now. Startup vibe, full of potential. Something called data. Something. I looked up from my coffee. Dataloom, she said after a pause, squinting slightly. Yeah, that's it. Kind of a weird name, but I already submitted my application last week. They'd be lucky to have me. She glanced around the table, seeking approval. If they don't hire me, it's their loss. I'm a catch. There was a split second where I could have said something, just a word, a glance, even a smirk. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded once, calmly, then returned to stirring my coffee. To her, I was still the quiet one, the boring sister, the one with mystery work no one could define. She'd never bothered to ask, and I'd never offered. That was the unspoken agreement in our family. If you weren't shining, you weren't really there. Vivian tapped her phone and held it up toward Mom. I updated my resume this week. Want to see it? Mom leaned in, impressed. Dad finally smiled. I counted the bubbles rising in my mug. The funny thing is, if Vivian had asked anyone at Dataloom who Eleanor Green was, they would have told her, "Oh, she's remote." Senior advisor, I think. No photos, no LinkedIn updates, just approval logs and technical documents. I had built a system so stable, it ran itself. Just like I'd built a life so invisible, no one saw it coming. If I get in, Vivian said with a final smug breath, it's their win. I stared at her for a moment longer, then turned to the window, watching a couple walk a golden retriever along the lake trail. You'll walk right into a system I built. Let's see how far you get without knowing who signs your paycheck. Vivian strutted into Dataloom in her signature designer heels, her stride as sharp as her tone. The receptionist smiled politely as she walked past, unaware she was greeting the sister of one of the company's co-founders. Vivian didn't know the glass walls belonged to me. From my apartment 2 miles away, I watched her through the security feed I'd helped design. The lobby camera offered a crisp angle. Vivian stopping to admire a geometric light fixture, then glancing at the framed mission statement on the wall, lips curling into a faint smirk. Technology woven with trust, she read aloud to herself, then scoffed. Who writes this stuff? I did. Her onboarding had come through the week prior. HR sent me the standard new hire packet for review, not knowing I read every line of those files personally. I had to. Vivian had passed the screening process with flying colors. A degree in finance, 6 years in accounting, personality flagged as high energy, references labeled her as decisive and ambitious. No one flagged the nepotism risk. No one knew we were related. Sam had texted me, "You okay with this?" I had replied simply, "Yes, let it play out." It had been my idea, years ago, to mask my role publicly. I didn't want to be the face, the story, the headline. I wanted to be the foundation. Dataloom didn't need 2 founders in the spotlight. Sam was brilliant with people. I was better with code. The agreement was mutual, sealed with a handshake and a shared bowl of microwave mac and cheese when we closed our first deal. Now, Vivian was here, walking through the world I built, unknowingly. Her first week was exactly what I expected. Loud greetings, confident handshakes, laughter in the hallway outside the budget team's cluster of desks. She made quick allies with the marketing lead and the facilities manager. She called herself a people person and quick study. Her emails were punctuated with exclamation marks. She left voice notes instead of Slack messages. She even tried to schedule a coffee chat with Sam, who politely declined, blaming back-to-back investor meetings. Meanwhile, I monitored everything quietly. The security feeds weren't meant for spying. They were internal tools coded during our first growth phase to enhance system integrity and space management. But they also gave me windows, literal and metaphorical, into my company's daily rhythm. I used them sparingly, but this time I couldn't help myself. She passed by the analytics board on day 3, paused, then tapped a sticky note that said, "Client X, Q2 anomalies," with a confident, "We'll need to optimize that model. Looks inefficient." The junior data analyst beside her blinked. "You know how that model works?" She shrugged. "Finance isn't just about numbers. It's about the story they tell." She sounded polished, and I'll admit it, capable. Sam called on day 4. "So, still want to stay invisible?" I turned from the camera feed to look out my window. She doesn't know who I am. Let's see who she becomes when no one's clapping. There's something strangely powerful about watching someone from a distance, especially when they've never bothered to truly see you. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just curious. For once, Vivian was on stage without the familiar chorus of family praise. No mom to beam at every sentence. No dad to boast about her internships at dinner parties. Here, she had to earn the applause. And in some ways she was. That didn't mean she was seeing clearly. During a Thursday budget check-in, she made a comment about restructuring workflows that seemed outdated. The team nodded. She pointed at a spreadsheet projected on the wall. "Who's E. Green? They've been signing off on these for months." Silence. "Not sure," someone replied. "Probably a contractor? We never see them around." Vivian raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Back in my apartment, I stopped the video feed and sat back in my chair. It wasn't the first time she had seen my name. Eleanor Green was printed, albeit small, on nearly every high-level financial document at Dataloom. I'd kept the title vague, Senior Technical Advisor. My access rights were coded under a different layer of permissions, and only Sam had full transparency on ownership. The rest of the company only knew my initials, but Vivian had always been sharp when it suited her. That night, after brushing my teeth and checking my inbox, I opened the system log one last time. A new alert blinked at the top of the dashboard. Internal document flagged, V green file, fiscal model, R&D division, editor, Eleanor Green. I closed the alert. She's digging. I stared at the screen for a while longer. Then I reached for the small photo on my desk, Sam and I back in 2018, holding our first contract with a regional bank. I was wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too big, hair unbrushed, eyes puffy from 3 sleepless nights. Sam looked like he'd just won the lottery. I remember thinking, no one needs to know who I am as long as what I build works. But now, someone was getting close to knowing. She said my name like a question. Not Eleanor, not Elle, just Eleanor. I knew this moment would come. I had rehearsed it in my head a dozen ways, imagined what I'd say, how I'd stand. But now that she was here, standing in the doorway of the server room with the soft blue light glinting off her earrings, everything felt different. The server room was cool, quiet, alive with the low hum of machines. Their steady rhythm always soothed me, each soft whir a reminder that something was working, even if no one noticed it. Vivian stepped inside slowly, still holding the folder. Her heels were off. I spotted them neatly placed outside the door like she was entering a sacred space. Her eyes scanned the rows of equipment, the blinking lights, the digital logs open on the screens. This floor is restricted, I finished without looking up. I know. She hesitated. Only senior management has access. I finally turned toward her, My voice was steady. "That's me." Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. She looked smaller than usual, like someone who had just walked into the wrong house and realized the pictures on the wall were all of her. "I saw the files," she said. "The ownership records, the budget approvals, your name, your signature. It's everywhere." I nodded once. Vivian looked at the console beside me, then at the glowing logo on the wall. Her hand gripped the folder tighter. "You're the co-founder." "I am." Her lips pressed together. She took a slow step forward, the silence between us thick as steam in a sealed room. "All this time?" she asked. "You've been here all along?" "In a way." She let out a shaky laugh, dry, bewildered, more self-directed than amused. "You're kidding. You've been signing off on every budget I've submitted since day one." "Only when they deserved approval." She blinked at that. The pause that followed wasn't awkward. It was necessary. It allowed everything to sink in. The humiliation, the surprise, the realization that the person she thought she had surpassed had been watching from the wings all along. "I thought I was impressing someone named E. Green," she said after a while, her voice softer now. "I thought it was some invisible compliance director." "You weren't wrong," I said. "I just didn't think my name would mean much to you." Vivian looked like she wanted to protest, but stopped herself. Sam appeared then, like he'd sensed the shift in the air. He stood at the doorway, holding a black folder and a bottle of sparkling water. He raised an eyebrow when he saw us, then handed the folder to me. I opened it, scanned the top sheet, and without a word, held it out to Vivian. She took it automatically, her brows furrowed. "It's a new CSR initiative," I said. "Community-based mentorship. We're setting up a pilot program for underfunded high schools, tech workshops, internships, and career planning for girls in STEM." Vivian stared at the pages. "Budget projections, community outreach timelines, program goals." On top was a sticky note in my handwriting. "Potential lead, Vivian Green, pending interest." She looked up slowly. "You want me to lead this?" "If you want to." Her voice caught slightly. "Why me?" "Because you're good," I said simply. "You know how to speak. You know how to organize. And when you care, really care, you can be powerful." She didn't respond immediately. She flipped the page instead, skimming the bullet points, the signature line at the bottom, "Eleanor Green, co-founder." "I don't understand," she finally said. "Why would you give me this? After everything?" I leaned back, resting my hands on the edge of the server rack. "Because this isn't about everything. It's about what comes next." Vivian was silent. I watched her eyes dart across the room, pausing on the glowing servers, the blinking cursor on the terminal, the empty chair beside mine. "This whole time," she said, "I thought you were just floating, that you didn't care, that you were lost." "I wasn't floating," I replied. "I was building." She held my gaze then. For once, she didn't look past me or through me. She looked at me. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," she said quietly, tapping the folder. "You won't know until you try." Her jaw tightened, but her shoulders lowered just a bit. She didn't give the folder back. She didn't throw it on the floor. She just held it. Then, without a word, she turned toward the door. I thought she might slam it, or say something biting, some sarcastic quip to recover her balance. But she didn't. She walked out, and she left the door open behind her. Not all reconciliations come with apologies. Some come with small, deliberate choices. Leaving the door open was hers, and that was enough. For now, she hadn't spoken to me in a week. No comments in the hallway, no casual remarks during meetings, Not even a look in the break room. Just silence. So I answered her the only way I knew how, through something that didn't need applause. It was late fall in Seattle, the kind of gray that hung over the city like a wet blanket. Wind hissed against my apartment windows, making them tremble lightly in their frames. From my desk, I could see the last amber leaves clinging to a maple outside, stubborn against the early evening gusts. My desk light cast a warm, honey-colored glow over the objects in front of me. A navy linen notebook with gilded corners, a black ink fountain pen, and a blank card. No embellishments, just smooth cardstock and a quiet idea. I uncapped the pen, wrote slowly across the first page. "You're capable. I'm proud to work with you." That was all. No signature, no flourish, just truth. Something she could carry with her or ignore. Her choice. I folded the card, slipped it into the notebook, and tied them together with a strip of cream ribbon. Then I placed the package in a plain manila envelope, printed a label in small, tidy font, 2V, green, from Internal Communications. The next morning, I brought it to the front desk on the 10th floor. "Could you please get this to Vivian sometime today?" I asked Martha, the assistant. She gave me a small smile and a nod. She never asked who it was from. I didn't expect to see it again. Vivian had always been a person who shined in spotlights, not in shadows. She celebrated loudly. She mourned performatively. The idea of her quietly opening a notebook in a quiet space felt foreign, but maybe that was the point. Maybe she needed something different now. The last time I had written something for her was when we were kids. I'd slipped a handmade Christmas card under her pillow, just a simple drawing of us standing side by side, holding tiny snowmen. Inside, I'd written, "Thank you for teaching me how to climb trees." She never mentioned it. I found the card weeks later, bent under a pile of dance trophies and unopened nail polish. I told myself I wasn't hurt. This time, I expected nothing. And for days, that's exactly what I got. No email, no Slack message, no change in her behavior. At least not obviously. But then slowly, there were glimmers, hints. Vivian started staying 5 minutes late after meetings. She took fewer calls during team huddles. Her laughter, once sharp and constant, grew softer. She brought a spiral notebook to budget reviews and actually jotted things down. Once, I saw her help a junior team member reformat a presentation without being asked. And then came the file. It appeared on my dashboard late one Thursday afternoon. Touch the Future, CSR Proposal for Girls in Tech. Submitted by Vivian Green. I opened it expecting a half-baked pitch. Instead, I found a plan. 6 months of workshops, target schools, volunteer mentor schedules, proposed speakers, a budget plan that actually considered community needs instead of optics. And at the bottom of the introductory letter, inspired by Eleanor Green, who reminded me that sometimes the quietest voices still build the loudest legacies. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I clicked Approve. That weekend, I stopped by the office just before sunset. It was quiet, the way I liked it. Most people had already left for dinner plans or errands. I wandered down the long corridor of frosted glass panels, past our mission statement etched on a steel plate, technology woven with trust. The pantry light was still on. I paused when I saw her. Vivian stood near the kettle, a tea sachet in one hand, waiting as water streamed into a carafe. Her sweater sleeves were rolled to her elbows, and her hair, usually immaculately styled, was pulled into a lazy knot. On the table beside her sat the notebook, open, used. The corner of one page was curled, and ink stains trailed off the edge like a thought that ran out of room. She turned at the sound of my steps. Her eyes met mine, not sharply, not defensively, just honestly. "I've written a few pages," she said, voice low. "It's beautiful." I didn't ask what she wrote. I didn't need to. "It's yours now," I said. She nodded once, not looking away. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't flinch. Didn't walk off in a swirl of perfume and pride. She lingered, just long enough to let the silence say something softer than words could. Then she walked past me, the faint scent of jasmine trailing behind her. When I turned back, the notebook still lay open on the table, a new page half filled, a pen resting gently across the spine. I didn't read her words, but I smiled. Growth, I've learned, is rarely loud. It happens in notebooks, not on stages. It takes root in pauses, not declarations. And sometimes it arrives not with an apology, but with the sound of a door left open and a page still drying. I never needed applause. But tonight, I owed the truth a moment in the light. Outside the venue, Lake Union shimmered under a velvet sky. The lights from the docked boats twinkled faintly, dancing like distant echoes of the chandelier glow inside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the modern hall, Seattle's skyline stretched like a silent witness to everything I had quietly built over 5 years. Inside, it was warm. Golden chandeliers casting soft halos over the crowd. Hundreds of guests filled the space. Investors, engineers, media, partners, interns. People who knew Dataloom for its numbers and clean user dashboards, but not for the woman who had written the very backbone of its intelligence from behind a locked apartment door. Sam stood at the podium, tie slightly loosened, smile relaxed, and full of practiced charm. He was in his element. "We started with 2 laptops, 3 mugs of stale coffee, and no clue what we were doing," he said, and the audience chuckled. "Our first model crashed a bank server by accident. Our second one almost passed out a CEO. Our third? That one changed everything." His stories always landed. The mishaps, the all-nighters, the phone calls from clients at 3 a.m. He painted the struggle as noble, the success as inevitable. But then, he paused. His hand gripped the podium differently. His smile softened. "There's one part of the story I haven't told," he said, "and I think tonight's the night." The room quieted. The clink of a fork against glass in the back stopped midair. "There's someone here who's never stood in front of this crowd before. Someone who's been at every turn, every pivot, every breakthrough. But she chose to work from behind the curtain, out of humility, not fear." He turned slightly, his eyes finding mine across the side of the stage. "My co-founder, the woman who architected our systems, secured our core, and signed off on almost every major decision we've ever made. Please welcome Eleanor Green." It felt like the floor slipped away beneath me. For a moment, I stayed still, letting the silence stretch long enough for my pulse to calm. Then I stood and walked forward. Every step felt unreal. I could hear nothing but the sharp click of my heels against the polished floor, feel nothing but the heat of 1,000 eyes turning in my direction. I stepped up into the light. It wasn't blinding. It was soft, gentle, like dusk finally making room for dawn. I adjusted the mic. My fingers trembled slightly as I leaned forward. "My name is Eleanor Green," I began. "And yes, this is the first time most of you are seeing me." There was a light ripple of laughter, warm, supportive. "I've always believed in building things that last. Not headlines, not hype, systems, structures, things that work." I paused, exhaled. When we founded Dataloom, Sam was the voice. I was the silence. He met with investors. I met with errors in the logs at 2 a.m. While he shared our vision with the world, I tried to make sure that vision didn't crash under its own weight. My voice shook slightly, but I didn't step back. We always said Dataloom was built on trust. And the truth is, for 5 years, you've trusted a name without knowing the face behind it. I looked up, scanning the room. Some of the strongest builders, I said slowly, don't need to be seen to know their value. They don't stand in spotlights. They stand in server rooms, in late nights, in silence. The words hung there, not grand, not poetic, just real. I saw heads nod, faces soften. A woman from HR wiped the corner of her eye. An intern mouthed something to his neighbor wide-eyed. And then, beyond the crowd, near a column draped in silver fabric, I saw her. Vivian. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, not clapping, not smiling, just watching. Her arms were crossed, but not in resistance, and in her hand, held loosely, almost like an afterthought, was the notebook. My throat tightened. I nodded softly, stepped back from the mic. Applause erupted, not a roar, but a rising warmth, like a room finally breathing together after holding its breath. Sam met me at the edge of the stage with a quiet, proud smile. "You made it," he whispered. "I said what mattered," I replied. He nodded once and handed me a glass of water. I slipped away from the center, needing space. I walked past glowing tables, past servers refilling drinks, past compliments I couldn't quite absorb yet. And then, by the side exit near the coat room, I saw her again, Vivian, still holding the notebook, still standing alone. We locked eyes, and for the first time in years, there was no dismissal in her gaze, no judgment, only presence, recognition. I took a step toward her, heart pounding, but someone called her name from across the room. She turned reflexively, and when I looked again, she was gone. I stood still, letting the moment settle, letting the silence hold space for something we hadn't been able to speak yet. Because sometimes what changes people isn't an apology, it's a truth spoken clearly. It's seeing someone differently. And tonight, for the first time, my sister had seen me not as a quiet extra in her story, but as the author of my own. Same cafe, same table. The sunlight still filtered through the crooked blinds, painting golden stripes across the dark wood and maroon upholstery. The same waitress with the messy ponytail refilled coffee without asking. The same scent of maple syrup and buttered toast floated in the air, as familiar as the quiet jazz humming from a ceiling speaker. Everything was the same, except for Vivian,